We live in a dream world in which all our necessities are at our fingertips. The gig economy provides us with a way to commute from one destination to another, eat the food we like every single time, buy groceries, clothes, electronics, and many more. They can help you clean your house, give you a haircut, or a massage anytime you wish. So the gig economy is your maid, driver, and courier service all rolled into one. Welcome to the world of platform-driven gig economy. Startups, many of which are celebrated unicorns, have emerged as a major driver of the gig economy in India. This implies that, at least in principle, the business model underlying the platform-based gig economy should be feasible and even profitable on a sustained basis. So how does the gig economy work? And what enables them to be profitable?
Platforms facilitate transactions between the set of people that buy services and those that provide them. If one thinks about profit as being equal to revenue minus average cost per customer multiplied by the total customers that they can cater to, it becomes clear that one of the keys to profitability of the platforms is to minimize the average cost per customer. And how can they do that? This comes from spreading the costs over a large volume. And one way for platforms to achieve that is by aggregating orders such that the delivery agent can deliver multiple orders in a single trip.
There's enough known about logistics, which says that unless there's a minimum scale, logistics are not cost efficient. So what I mean by that, let me give you an example of BigBasket, right? Because that's not an app-based platform kind of a company, right? If you think about how BigBasket's primary service works, you order your groceries and you get to pick a slot. You don't necessarily get it in the next 10 minutes. There's a separate service that BigBasket has now, but if you think about the bulk of BigBasket's revenues, they come from, in some sense, a pre-scheduled delivery, right? Now, the benefit of that is BigBasket has some advance notice of when deliveries need to happen based on the customers who pick up a particular slot. And also, these slots don't stay open for long, right? So if I'm ordering late, then maybe some slots that others were able to see earlier on will no longer be available to me. So in that sense, some of your planning is happening after you know demand, which makes it easier. It helps you avoid some of the challenges with having to have some spare capacity all the time. And that's avoided cost, because if you don't have to have that, or if that is reduced, then that's avoided cost, which means your total cost of delivering the service comes down.
We basically design our delivery points across a city and say that, okay, if we can figure out how to position our delivery points, our grocery delivery points, as close to dense population clusters as possible, right? What that ends up doing is that reduces your average distance per delivery, right? And so that team looks at dozens of different factors like geographic centricity, road patterns, traffic data. They look at rider availability. They look at, the likelihood of specific roads to get flooded or not flooded in rain situations. And so with all of that combined, right, you're able to find, okay, how do I service the maximum number of customers possible in the shortest distance possible? And that ends up leading to lower delivery times and lower delivery distances today.
In essence, the key to profitability for a platform is not only to create demand for the services provided by them, but also provide the services efficiently by reducing average costs.
So the scale at which platforms operate is important for its profitability and sustenance. But are there challenges to scaling operations in India?
One way to achieve scale is by providing multiple choices to the customers on the platform, such as, say, different food choices from many different restaurants. This is not only context specific and may apply only to a few sectors, but it also seems like something that may not be a big challenge, especially for the big players. Moreover, with the advent and the onset of COVID-19, many businesses anyway tied up with these platforms and increased the choices to their customers.
But I think two really meaningful things have happened, right? One is on the restaurant partner side. If you think about what happened, what as an economy went through for the last 2.5 years with COVID, right? With the amount of shutdowns and opens and lockdowns and opens, and you talk about another tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of restaurants being able to stay on and provide employment to the kitchen staff, right? Purely because of these platforms. I would say that this has obviously contributed meaningfully to the ecosystem.
One challenge in India is its diversity. India might just be a collection of many local markets than a single unified market.
In some sense, there isn't enough scale. And when I say enough scale, it's not just in aggregate, right? You might have scale at an aggregate. At a country-wide, sure, you have tens of millions of customers ordering from you every year. But you need scale at a much more micro level. So think about a restaurant to neighborhood or a restaurant region to a neighborhood. At that level, you need scale for the economics to start becoming kind of viable for you, right? So the primary challenge to me seems to be that of scale. And unless you kind of start addressing or being able to kind of identify those specific customer segments or neighborhoods or restaurant clusters and neighborhoods which are profitable, it might still be a challenge.
When we talk about the West, like a country like the US, right? In the US, things are quite standardized. While in India, right, the challenges in Bombay would be different than the challenges in Chandigarh, then would be very different than what is in Kolhapur. Right, so this is a business which has no playbook. New playbooks get formed every day in every city.
But startups continue to experiment in an effort to find a business model and a routine that works for them to meet their profitability objective. In particular, some platform operators have actively explored if the average cost can be minimized by expanding to other categories. And some of this experimentation has also spilled over to other participants in the ecosystem, such as restaurants.
So the pivots that Swiggy has made over the years, and especially in the last couple of years, right, is that as we were moving from a single category business, which is just food delivery, to now multi-category business, right? So our current organizational structure obviously wouldn't support that because we had a central product team, we had a central engineering team, central marketing, and so on and so forth, right? As Instamart has become a really big business, as Genie as a business is growing significantly, right? And food, of course, continues to grow. So we realized that a single centralized business doesn't work anymore, right? So I think the biggest pivot that we've made in the last year and a half is moving towards like a single threaded leader or an STL, something what we learned from Amazon, right? So Amazon, you have different business units managing their own destiny, right? So you'll have hard lines, soft lines, right? Similarly at Swiggy too, we have like food, we have Instamart, we have Genie, who are managing their own P&Ls, and within their P&Ls now there are different product leaders, business leaders, so on and so forth, right? While while business and the P&L is decentralized, there are certain central functions that have now been formed, right? So one central function is the delivery partner and delivery experience central function, which is my function, right? So we are a horizontal service that powers business units, right? Similarly, we have a now central growth function that powers this, right? So you can think about horizontals, right, which are the support functions across businesses, and then there are the verticals, which are the business units themselves, right? So I think that has been a very big pivot, and as you can imagine, right, I mean, as you move like an organization of 3,000-4,000 people moving in that direction and making sure that nothing is disrupted, but all of this is just centered around growth. So I think that is one significantly big pivot from an organizational structure that we've taken, right?
Ever-evolving technology has been a key driver for expanding platform scale of operations, while these platforms continue to experiment with their organizational routines. The use of advanced algorithms made it possible to predict demand and find the optimum number of workers to fulfill it. Technology has not only enabled platforms to optimize their operational cost effectively, but also apply dynamic pricing. As a result, platforms have relied on technology to solve some key challenges in the diverse and idiosyncratic landscapes of Indian cities.
So the role of platforms, right? So the platformization of the gig work or the gig economy essentially is aimed to providing more information to people who on the supply side, right? So what's the use of information on the supply side? The people who essentially want to participate in the gig economy, it simply gives you the ability to choose when you want to work, because all information is available, right? You might know how much you're going to be getting paid for that particular gig. You might also know how many other people are sort of waiting along with you in the same precinct, and so on and so forth. So the role of platform, especially on the suppliers or the participants or the workers side, is essentially this idea of providing more information so that people who want to participate decide whether and when to participate as well. Similarly, this whole idea on the other side, from the platform operator side, is about trying to respond to the intertemporal variation in demand. And when we are talking about the intertemporal variation in demand or the variation in demand over time, we are not talking about daily demand. We are talking about hourly demand, maybe even demand by the minute, and so on and so forth. So the idea for them is to be able to get this information, and preferably in a predictive way, so much so that they can adjust the supply of workers to sort of meet the demand. So the platforms essentially minimize what maybe in retailer terms, minimizing the stock out cost, right? And how do we minimize the stock out cost in this kind of a scenario? By making accurate predictions about demand at a particular instant in time, and trying to ramp up supply in response to how this demand itself is changing by the minute, or in a matter of few minutes.
And so if we keep our delivery points at the heart of each neighborhood and focus it, build a geofence, like virtually, that makes sure that our riders stay within that neighborhood when they're delivering, not only do you get those shorter distances, but you also end up getting riders that don't have to go over long distances or highways or high speed sort of roads to get to the next delivery point, right? And so that ends up, for us, leading to some pretty solid statistics on safety and well-being for our riders. And in fact, it's showing up in our overall retention numbers today.
So we started developing the full stack tech. So right from the back end of the inventory management to the POS systems, to the further integration with the aggregators, etc., we were the first ones to do that. So even today, we have a full stack tech which kind of integrates the entire value chain. Parallelly, because we were always into delivery business, we had our own delivery fleet with us.
The use of technology also created positive spillovers for suppliers who could now scale their brands through a platform. But scaling platforms involves one-time investments to build scale in delivery, onboarding, and training delivery partners. Technology also enables platforms to minimize fixed costs. Emerging technologies like artificial intelligence have significantly helped in keeping fixed costs down when platforms scale up their operations.
The operating system which we created gave a unique opportunity not for only Rebel brands to scale, but also for a lot of Indian brands to scale. As and when this was happening, what we realized was that we can not only scale our own brands, partner brands, but also give this as an opportunity to international brands who are trying to come to Indian market to test and quickly scale up.
Artificial intelligence has a key role to play. I think it's just going to get greater and greater impact as we go forward. In UC, for example, right? Let me take examples of how AI has been leveraged for us to grow leaps and bounds. It starts off with the onboarding of partners, right? So we want the cost of acquisition of partners to be as low as possible. Now, how does that happen? It happens if you are able to leverage tech. So we have a AI chatbot where partners can just online itself or through WhatsApp itself be able to interact with the onboarding flow, the questionnaire that we have, so on and so forth, and without the need of manual agents giving them a call and assisting them to the nearest training center for an interview and so on and so forth. All of this happens through the app. So that is one example, right? The other example of AI playing a major role is with respect to document verification. So we all these partners undergo a background verification check, right? So we do image processing of the documents that we collect from them. That again gives you a far greater security and safety on the platform. Third thing that we do over here is, which I think so has been a game changer, is with ability to monitor quality of the service on the platforms. Another example of how AI has been a part of the onboarding journey is where we decide, like for example, the underwriting part for providing loans benefits to the partners is done through AI written underwriting model to be able to ensure that partners will be able to take the loan and appropriately pay back in a decent period of time.
It is fair to say that the technology has not completely solved the issue of fluctuations in demand, and as a result, either consumer or gig worker pays the price. For instance, these fluctuations often lead to a surge in pricing. Sometimes, gig workers are at the receiving end of these deficiencies.
Predicting demand at a hub level becomes very challenging. Nonetheless, so what we do is we predict this particular demand well in advance. We try to onboard our service professionals basis that demand, and we do course corrections as and when we get closer to the D0 time. But absolutely, this is the fundamental nature of a platform, is to be able to capture demand. But while capturing demand, you have to ensure that the earnings of the service providers is also bet. If you're able to maintain that balance, that's what makes a platform successful.
So what we find in this sector is that a lot of terms of reference or terms of service for these workers are governed by algorithms. So transparency is an issue. A worker may not know that on what basis the worker is being rated, on what basis the worker is being compensated or being provided incentives.
I believe there's a high possibility of an algorithm being biased, because every algorithm is trained on a set of rules, that these are the 10 things. If you get one of these, and then everything falls into a default category. So in that case, so basically take an example of sending a post. Whenever you send a post, you write an address. It checks with all the addresses of the city, and whenever there's no address, it returns to the post office. So there's always a default fallback, which with each and every system, not only the technology system, but even the operational system, there's always a fallback. So if you send more and more data to the default side, it will eventually fail and be biased on that. So the technology teams should be overlooking what the results your algorithm is processing and accordingly act on it. So that is one of the major thing which I believe the technology should be responsible for.
We tend to assume algorithms are neutral. We tend to assume that, there is no room for bias, there's no room for prejudice, and things will work very smoothly and seamlessly. But ultimately, I think we need to understand, what are algorithms being designed for and where are platforms deploying them. Clearly, in this particular situation, algorithms are being deployed to represent the interest of the platform. It is in the interest of the platform to make sure that workers work long hours, that they actually are hitting all their targets in the ways that they want to. There is a certain insecurity that workers experience because of algorithmic management, which also works to platforms' benefits.
Overall, although the platform-based gig economy is already large, platform operators are still in the process of experimenting with how technology can help in addressing the heterogeneous needs of different markets in India and drive the profitability of their respective businesses. There is a lot of ground that needs to be covered before routines and business models are discovered and perfected. However, important questions persist. What are the costs of experimentation? Who bears the costs of experimentation? And how should these costs be compensated?